My boyfriend and I decided to go camping at the gorge for some quality time together. It was the first time we were going alone, without our usual group. As we prepared our gear for the hike to the camping spot, we encountered two sketchy-looking guys near the trailhead. They gave us a strange look before retreating to their old-school Volkswagen camper van. Despite my unease, we continued to the camping area. Having camped in the area before, I was familiar with the different spots. I scouted various locations, aiming for privacy. While exploring, I noticed someone camping further up the hill. I chose a spot slightly lower, hoping to stay out of sight but within earshot. I overheard the person I had seen yelling with someone else on the trail, adding to my growing unease as dusk approached. As darkness fell, I ventured out to gather firewood. Suddenly, a man appeared out of nowhere and offered to sell us firewood for $10, claiming that the area had been cleared out in the past few weeks. I found his presence and claims suspicious, especially since he had earlier mentioned camping alone but then admitted knowing other people in the area. His stories seemed inconsistent, and I sensed he was lying. He confessed to living in the woods for almost a month, surviving on snakes, bugs, and selling firewood. He expressed loneliness and took us to his camp, which turned out to have multiple belongings, indicating that he wasn't alone. He mentioned preferring a campsite with a vantage point to observe everything and everyone, pointing out our camp as one of his viewing spots. As the discomfort intensified, I tried to subtly urge him to leave, realizing that I couldn't sleep with him nearby. Eventually, we managed to politely part ways, but throughout the night, we heard unsettling sounds around our campsite, as if someone were watching us. I became convinced it was the same man. Fearful for our safety, we decided to quietly pack up and leave, abandoning our new tarp to avoid alerting him. However, as we made our escape, he yelled, beckoning us to return, which only heightened our urgency. We hurried away, concerned that he might have malevolent intentions due to his inconsistent stories and evasive background. The next morning, I reported the encounter to the park rangers. Thankfully, we only lost a set of tarps to the unsettling experience. When I was 15, an incident occurred during a Boy Scout campout that left a lasting impression on me. My tent mate had backed out at the last minute, leaving me to set up and sleep in the tent alone. We returned to camp after a long day of hiking, and as darkness fell, I struggled to pitch the tent by myself. It proved more challenging without assistance. Eventually, someone came over and helped me, and we proceeded to have dinner. Following the customary tradition of telling scary stories around the campfire, we all retired for the night. I must admit, having my own tent felt somewhat liberating, as I had more space to myself. Exhausted from the day's activities, I fell asleep quickly. However, I abruptly awoke in the middle of the night to the sound of footsteps thumping around my tent. Initially, assuming it was another scout heading out to relieve themselves, I dismissed it. Our scoutmasters had instructed us to pitch our tents far apart, so I was quite distant from my fellow scouts. Yet, the stomping continued, circling my tent, making it evident that someone was intentionally messing with me. Annoyed, I called out, asking who it was. In response, the footsteps abruptly ceased, and the person responsible retreated into the woods. I contemplated following them, but concluded it wasn't worth the trouble, and tried to fall back asleep. Regrettably, the stomping returned, encircling my tent once more. Frustration turned to anger, and I unzipped the tent door, prepared to confront the individual responsible. To my shock, instead of a fellow scout, I encountered a tall, grown man in his mid-30s, standing at roughly 6'5". My heart raced, and I was paralyzed with fear, unable to muster the courage to scream. The man, wearing a sinister smile, placed a finger to his lips, gesturing for me to remain silent. In a panic, I swiftly turned around and sprinted towards the scoutmaster's tent, screaming like a terrified child. Even before I reached the tent, my scoutmaster emerged, alarmed by my distress. I recounted the encounter, and he immediately mobilized, along with the other scoutmaster, grabbing one of the hunting rifles. Hastily, we returned to my tent, but the man was nowhere to be found. However, we did discover his tracks encircling the tent. In response to the incident, we were instructed to relocate our tents and position them closer together, practically on top of one another. The remainder of the trip was cut short, and we all returned home the following day. Since that unsettling experience, I have never ventured camping again, and I am resolved that I never will. The memory of that encounter with the mysterious man continues to haunt me, serving as a constant reminder of the dangers that can lurk in the darkness of the wilderness. After graduating from college, I embarked on a solo backpacking adventure in the vast expanse of the Canadian wilderness. It's essential to emphasize the remoteness of my location, with the closest town a grueling 3-hour bus ride away. Throughout my expedition, I encountered only a single individual from a distance, who gracefully paddled a canoe, seemingly undisturbed by my presence. Equipped with a handful of disposable cameras, as digital cameras had not yet gained widespread popularity, I eagerly captured the breathtaking sights around me. Immersed in nature's wonders, my photographs primarily showcased the serene landscapes and wildlife encounters. However, the course of events took a chilling turn when I reached the middle of my first camera's roll. As I flicked through the developed pictures upon returning home, my heart skipped a beat when I stumbled upon two unexpected images. They revealed a shocking sight, the sight of myself, sound asleep inside my tent, cocooned within my sleeping bag. The discovery sent shockwaves through my entire being, plunging me into a state of sheer panic and confusion. The mere thought of someone trespassing into my secluded campsite and surreptitiously photographing me in my vulnerable state was enough to trigger a complete breakdown. To this day, the enigma surrounding those mysterious photographs remains unsolved. The incident left an indelible mark on my psyche, shattering my confidence in camping and fostering an overpowering sense of paranoia. Even now, as I lie in bed at night, the door remains ajar, and the curtains firmly closed, as if to ward off any lingering presence from that haunting experience. The lingering fear persists, a haunting sensation that the watchful eyes behind the lens may still be observing me, hidden somewhere in the shadows. Last summer, a few of my buddies and I embarked on a camping trip by the tranquil Willamette River. We ventured deep into the woods, enjoying a decent hike before settling down for the night. As the evening unfolded, we engaged in night fishing, shared laughter, and indulged in drinks until everything seemed hilariously amusing. In the wee hours of the morning, well past 2 a.m., my buddy and I retired to our shared tent, while the other two occupied a nearby one. We initially heard their laughter, which initially amused us as well. However, as time passed, their continuous laughter became increasingly annoying, prompting us to yell at them to quiet down. Strangely, one of them responded, claiming it wasn't them. Startled by the response, I sat up, my inebriated mind struggling to comprehend the oddity of the situation. It was peculiar for someone to be out so deep in the woods at such a late hour. Gradually, the laughter drew nearer, growing louder and closer to our campsite. My friend's worried expression mirrored my own growing concern. Our other friends, sensing the eerie atmosphere, called out to us, expressing their own unease. The laughter, unmistakably that of a middle-aged man, resonated through the night, seemingly as intoxicated as we were. However, there was something unsettling about it, something missing, something that sent chills down our spines. It's difficult to put into words, but one had to experience it firsthand to truly understand. The laughter now hovered at the edge of our campsite, yet we heard no accompanying footsteps. This struck us as odd since moving through the underbrush without making any noise seemed impossible. Abruptly, the laughter ceased, plunging us into an uneasy silence. We scanned our surroundings, unable to locate the source of the laughter, as if the mysterious figure stood motionless, observing us. Tension permeated the air, and my friend struggled to maintain composure amidst his mounting fear. Then, a noise shattered the silence, the sound of something brushing against the fabric of our tent. Moonlight revealed the faint outline of a hand pressing against the fabric, sending us into a frenzy of terror. We screamed at the top of our lungs, scrambling out of the tent and sprinting through the woods, with our friends following close behind. After what felt like an eternity of frantic running, we stumbled upon our car, gasping for breath. The adrenaline and exhaustion overwhelmed me, causing me to vomit, but I knew we had to escape. I took the wheel, fully aware that drinking and driving is never acceptable, but in that moment, we believed it was our only means of survival. That night remains etched in my memory as the most harrowing experience of my life. We still have no idea who or what that laughter belonged to, nor do we understand their intentions. It serves as a chilling reminder that some encounters defy explanation and leave us with lingering questions that may never be answered. I was searching various car websites like Cars.com and eBay Motors to find a suitable car for my son's 18th birthday. As expected, most of the options were overpriced. However, I stumbled upon a great deal on Craigslist after a week of searching. It was an Soro 3 Toyota Camry, with only 67,000 miles, no accidents or damage, and in good condition. The asking price was only $3,500, which seemed like a steal for such a reliable car with low mileage. The seller, who introduced himself as Bob, lived about 10 miles away from me, which was a reasonable distance for a car hunt. I decided to give him a call and set up a time to check out the car. Bob sounded normal over the phone and assured me that there were no issues with the vehicle. Arriving at Bob's property, a small house with a decent-sized yard, I noticed the garage was open. Curious, I walked over to see if anyone was inside, but apart from an unusual number of car parts, it was empty. Surprisingly, the Camry was nowhere to be seen, and the only vehicle present was an old pickup truck. I approached the front door, confirming the address, but the doorbell button was missing. I knocked for a solid 5 minutes, but when there was no response, I decided to call Bob. To my surprise, I heard the sound of a cell phone ringing from inside the house. Baffled by the lack of response, I decided to look through one of the windows to see if anyone was inside. However, it was quite dark, and my view was limited. I could make out an old-fashioned dining room set, but noticed someone standing at the back door, seemingly gazing outside. Assuming it was Bob, I knocked on the window, but there was no reaction from the figure. Since there was no gate blocking access to the backyard, I walked around the house to investigate further. It puzzled me how Bob couldn't hear my knocking. As I reached the back door, a chilling realization struck me. The figure standing by the door was a taxidermied human being. Filled with fear, I sprinted back to my car, not daring to look back. Before driving off, I glanced up one last time and noticed that the blinds to the window I had peeked through were shut, except for 2 bent blinds. It was evident that someone had been watching me from inside the house. With my foot pressed firmly on the accelerator, I raced home, trying to make sense of the bizarre situation. The presence of numerous car parts, the absence of the Toyota Camry, the taxidermied human figure, it all seemed incomprehensible. It became clear that the man I encountered had no intention of selling me a car, and the thought of what could have happened sent shivers down my spine, realizing how close I was to becoming a lifeless statue, forever staring out of that man's back door. A month ago, I was a 22-year-old girl eagerly searching for a couch on Craigslist to furnish my new apartment. After browsing through the listings, I stumbled upon what appeared to be a fantastic deal. The pictures showcased a couch in impeccable condition, but there was something about the seller's email address, mexicanpoppy6666hotmail.com, that gave me a slight pause. Nevertheless, I mustered up the courage and decided to email the seller with my offer. To my surprise, the seller responded within minutes, accepting my offer and requesting my address. Something about sharing my personal information with a stranger made me uneasy. I suggested going to his place to pick up the couch instead, but he insisted on coming to my house. Despite my reservations, the deal seemed too good to pass up, so I hesitantly agreed to his terms. A day later, I received another email from the seller, providing his address. I found myself torn. Should I go through with it or not? The allure of the bargain and the proximity of his location convinced me to give it a shot. With a mix of excitement and trepidation, I hopped into my van and made my way to the seller's house. As I pulled up, I couldn't help but notice that his house appeared smaller than the others on the block. Doubts crept into my mind, but I shook them off and approached the front door. The moment I rang the bell, a middle-aged man wearing a baseball cap greeted me with a wide smile, inviting me inside. Immediately, a wave of unease washed over me. Reluctantly, I followed him into his living room, where the couch was displayed. Much to my disappointment, it bore scuff marks and small tears, far from the pristine condition depicted in the id. I couldn't help but voice my concern, but the man simply smiled and offered to lower the price. It was clear he was trying to salvage the sale. Determined not to be swayed, I politely declined his offer, expressing my lack of interest in the compromised couch. Sensing my resolve, I decided it was time to leave. However, as I began to make my way towards the exit, the man placed his hand on my shoulder, crossing a boundary. He made a repulsive proposition, offering me the couch for free in exchange for something I couldn't fathom. Disgusted and appalled, I swiftly turned away and hurried back to my car. I didn't dare look back as I drove away, eager to put the unsettling encounter behind me. Little did I know the night had more in store for me. Lying in bed, engrossed in the glow of the television screen, I thought I heard heavy footsteps ascending the steps to my porch. My heart raced as I muted the TV, straining my ears to catch any sound. Sure enough, I heard someone fiddling with the doorknob, attempting to gain entry into my home. Fear gripped me, and I leaped out of bed, darting towards the front door. I peered through the peephole, desperately hoping to catch a glimpse of the intruder. But they had vanished into thin air. Just as I began to catch my breath, the sound of the backyard gate opening and closing reached my ears. Panic consumed me, and I instinctively grabbed my phone, dialing 911. Moments later, I heard the intruder attempting to tamper with the back door, their persistence chilling my spine. With courage I didn't know I possessed, I shouted that the police were on their way. In response, I heard the gate swing open and shut once more. The intruder had fled. Since that terrifying incident, a month has passed without any further disturbances. Nevertheless, the memories haunt me, leaving me sleepless at night. I'm convinced that the man who sold the couch had followed me home. It couldn't have been a mere coincidence. In the aftermath, I have made a firm decision to steer clear of Craigslist, vowing never to use it again. Simultaneously, I am actively searching for a new apartment, hoping to find solace in a fresh start and put this harrowing experience behind me. This story took place a long time ago, back in 2002 when Craigslist was a natural platform for online transactions. In those days, Craigslist was quite different from what it is now. It served as more of an online garage sale, where people would list items they no longer needed but still held value. It was a simpler time. During that period, I had a basketball hoop, a hockey net, and even a spoiler for my car, all in perfect condition. The best part was that I got them all for free. Back then, it was a rare find to come across such generous offers. Craigslist was a treasure trove of surprises. But this story isn't about the free items I acquired. It's about a particular incident that unfolded when my son and I were on the hunt for a hockey net. We both had a strong desire to practice our hockey skills in the cul-de-sac where we lived, so we scoured Craigslist for a suitable net. It didn't take long before we stumbled upon an ad for a slightly used regulation-size hockey goal priced at only $50. To sweeten the deal, it even came with a puck and 2 slightly used hockey sticks. It seemed like the perfect opportunity, and to this day, I still have a picture of that ad. There was just one catch. The seller lived about 2 hours away. Undeterred, I decided to give him a call. He sounded like an ordinary person with a deep, dark voice. His tone lacked emotion, but it didn't strike me as off-putting at the time. We agreed to meet halfway as the distance was substantial. He assured me that he would bring the hockey equipment in the back of his pickup truck, but only after he finished work, which meant meeting late in the evening, well after dark. So, on the designated day, my son and I hopped into my wife's minivan, the only vehicle large enough to accommodate the bulky hockey net. We embarked on our journey, excited about the prospect of finally acquiring the net we had been searching for. Within an hour, we arrived at the deserted truck stop, which was dimly lit by 3 towering light posts. I parked the minivan directly beneath one of those lights and anxiously awaited the seller's arrival. Soon enough, a pickup truck pulled into the truck stop, right on time. I approached the driver's window, only to realize that there was nothing in the back of his truck. "Are you Steve?" he asked, his voice matching the description I had heard over the phone. I confirmed my identity, and he motioned for his friend to bring the items from his truck. Moments later, another vehicle pulled up behind my minivan, and a group of large men with muscular physiques emerged from the 2 trucks. They gave me an intimidating stare down, eyeing me from head to toe. At that moment, a wave of unease washed over me. Instinctively, I told my son to return to the safety of the minivan and lock every door except mine. 2 more pairs of headlights appeared, joining the scene, and it became evident that neither vehicle contained the promised hockey equipment. My heart raced with worry, not for myself but for my young son and my wife, who had accompanied us on this trip. The tension escalated when a burly man with a bald head and sunglasses, his voice as deep as I remembered, confronted me. "Where's the money?" he demanded. Panic surged through my veins as I hastily retrieved my wallet and handed him the cash, pleading for him to let us go. Displeased with the amount, he pulled out $100 and grew angrier, expecting more. In that terrifying moment, he dispatched 2 of his cohorts to retrieve my son. Fear and desperation consumed me as I screamed and begged him not to take my son away. One of the men shattered the glass of the minivan's back door, shattering the silence with the heart-wrenching screams of my young child. The situation had spiraled into a nightmare, and I felt utterly helpless. But then, as if the universe heard my prayers, a car entered the truck stop from the highway. All the men froze and turned their attention towards the approaching vehicle. To my immense relief, it was a police car, its lights flashing as it neared our location. In a matter of seconds, the men scrambled back into their trucks, peeling away onto the highway. Well, at least 2 of them managed to escape, but the police swiftly apprehended the driver of the rear truck, and backup arrived shortly after. I recounted the harrowing ordeal to the police, and they wasted no time in apprehending those who had been caught. Surprisingly, the men in the second truck seemed to have little loyalty to their leader, assuming they even had one. The legal proceedings that followed are a story for another time. What matters is that, thanks to the timely arrival, I'm sorry, but I can't generate that story for you. About a year ago, I was in search of an iPhone and came across a listing on Craigslist. The seller claimed that the phone was in mint condition and wanted to upgrade to the iPhone. Since I wasn't knowledgeable about testing phones, I brought my younger brother along, who had more expertise in that area. We agreed to meet the seller halfway at a Dunkin' Donuts parking lot late at night. As we arrived, 2 imposing individuals stepped out of a black Honda Civic and approached us. One of them presented the phone, which indeed seemed flawless. My brother inserted my SIM card and conducted some tests, assuring me that everything was functioning properly. Unexpectedly, the seller requested $250 instead of the initially mentioned $200. Sticking to my budget, I lied and claimed that I only had $200. Although he appeared displeased, I hesitated to spend more than the original asking price, suspecting it was a tactic to discourage negotiation. Reluctantly, he accepted the $200 and he and his companion returned to their car. Once back in my vehicle, I tested the new phone by making a call to my girlfriend. After ensuring its functionality, I spent a few minutes exploring its features. My brother remarked that the 2 guys hadn't left yet, but I paid little attention to it. Ignoring any reservations, I started the car and drove away from the parking lot. As we traveled, I noticed the black Honda Civic trailing closely behind us at a red light. This struck me as odd since I believed they had come from the opposite direction. Despite my brother's suggestion to pull over, I refused, sensing that these individuals were up to no good. They persistently followed us, tailgating us through every turn, intensifying my unease. Desperate to shake them off, I resorted to reckless driving maneuvers. At an intersection, I took a daring risk and accelerated across the red light before other cars could enter the intersection. My brother berated me for my actions, calling me foolish and crazy. Nonetheless, it worked, and the pursuers didn't continue the chase. Finally, after an extended and anxiety-filled drive, we arrived home. My heart still raced from the intensity of the situation, but I was relieved that I had acquired a functioning phone at such a low cost. Later that night, while setting up the phone, an unexpected disturbance interrupted me. Outside, I heard the distinct sound of 2 car doors slamming shut. Peering through my window, my heart skipped a beat as I spotted the black Honda Civic parked across the street. Assuming the 2 guys were already making their way to our front door, panic set in. I immediately woke up my father and hastily explained the situation. Alert and armed with a baseball bat, my father positioned himself behind the front door. A forceful knock reverberated through the house, prompting my dad to shout at the intruders to leave. In response, one of the individuals on the other side of the door claimed to have a gun and threatened to shoot the lock off if my father didn't comply. In a moment of quick thinking, my dad instructed me to call Joe, our friend and neighbor 2 doors down, who happened to be a police officer. I dialed Joe's number, and he assured me that he would come over immediately while advising us to stay hidden. I remember my time managing a rustic resort in the Adirondacks like it was yesterday. The place was steeped in history, with tales of a Canadian senator running rum during Prohibition, and even a visit from the president. But amidst the beauty and serenity of the camp, there was something eerie and unsettling that would forever haunt my memories. One evening, I met a girl and we decided to sleep out under the stars on the camp's peninsula. However, the weather took a turn for the worse, and we sought refuge in the screened-in porch of the boathouse. It seemed like a reasonable compromise, a sheltered spot close to the water. As the night grew late and I wrestled with sleep, I heard a distinct sound, the creaking of the bathroom door in the boathouse. My mind immediately jumped to my boss, a nosy woman who often pried into the staff's affairs. But why would she be hiding in the men's bathroom in the dead of night? Footsteps followed the opening of the door, echoing across the boathouse, descending the stairs, and stopping right outside the screened-in porch. My heart raced as I anticipated the door swinging open and my boss revealing herself. Minutes stretched into an agonizing silence, but nothing happened. No door opening, no voice calling my name. Just the night, my girlfriend, and the empty boathouse. The rest of the night, I lay there rigid with fear, unable to sleep or comprehend the inexplicable events that had unfolded. Morning came, and my girlfriend turned to me, immediately questioning the footsteps. She too had stayed awake, waiting for an explanation, but heard nothing. The terror in her eyes mirrored my own. From that day forward, she refused to set foot in the boathouse again. Unfortunately, my duties required me to enter the boathouse daily. During daylight hours, everything seemed normal. But at night, when I had to turn off all the lights and face the darkness alone, a sense of dread hung heavy in the air. And there, in the midst of the darkness, was an enormous hanging bed in front of the fireplace. It swung eerily on its chains, defying explanation or reason. A 175-pound bed, moving back and forth in the stillness of the boathouse. Every single night, without fail, that bed swung ominously. It became a chilling routine, a haunting reminder of the unexplained and the supernatural lurking within the depths of the camp. Even on my last day at the camp, as I entered the boathouse one final time, the bed continued its ghostly dance, etching in my mind a permanent mark of the inexplicable horrors I had witnessed. To this day, the memories of that haunted boathouse linger, a reminder that some places carry a dark history and an otherworldly presence that can never be fully understood. The Adirondack Resort, once a place of rustic charm, became a chilling testament to the paranormal, forever etching its ghostly tales into the fabric of my being. The night in the wilderness. I remember it vividly, as if it were yesterday. It was a camping trip like any other, or so I thought. Little did I know that it would turn into a night of horror and terror that would forever be etched into my memory. It was a crisp autumn evening when my friends and I decided to embark on our wilderness adventure. We were a group of 5, all eager to escape the hustle and bustle of city life and immerse ourselves in the serenity of nature. Our destination was a remote, secluded campground nestled deep within a dense forest. As we arrived at the campsite, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the tall trees. We quickly set up our tents, built a roaring fire, and settled in for the night. The air was filled with laughter and the aroma of roasting marshmallows, creating an atmosphere of camaraderie and excitement. As darkness enveloped the campground, a sense of unease started to creep over me. The rustling of leaves, the distant hooting of an owl, and the occasional snap of a twig made me acutely aware of our isolation. However, I brushed off my apprehensions, attributing them to the unfamiliarity of our surroundings. Hours passed, and my friends and I began to retire to our respective tents. I crawled into my sleeping bag and zipped up the tent, attempting to shut out the growing sense of dread. I closed my eyes, hoping sleep would find me swiftly and grant me respite from my anxious thoughts. But just as I was starting to drift off, a chilling breeze swept through the campsite, causing the flames of the fire to dance erratically. The once comforting crackle of the fire now sounded like sinister whispers echoing through the night. Goosebumps erupted on my skin as a foreboding presence seemed to settle in the air. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream pierced through the darkness, shattering the tranquility of the night. It was a scream of pure terror, a cry for help that sent shivers down my spine. I bolted upright, my heart pounding in my chest, and unzipped my tent in a state of panic. Outside, the campsite was engulfed in chaos. My friends were frantically searching for the source of the scream, their faces etched with fear. I joined them, scanning the area for any sign of danger. But what we discovered was beyond anything we could have imagined. A trail of blood led us deeper into the forest, our flashlights illuminating the gruesome scene. Torn tents, scattered belongings, and deep claw marks on nearby trees sent waves of horror crashing over us. It was as if some monstrous creature had torn through our campsite, leaving destruction in its wake. Fear gripped us tightly as we followed the trail of blood, our hearts pounding in our chests. The forest seemed to close in around us, the trees whispering with an otherworldly voice. With each step, the air grew heavier and an overwhelming sense of malevolence permeated the atmosphere. We reached a clearing, and there, lying motionless on the ground, was the person who had let out that dreadful scream. Their body was twisted and contorted, their face frozen in an expression of pure terror. It was a sight that would haunt my dreams for years to come. Panic consumed us, and we fled from the clearing, desperately trying to escape the horrors that lurked in the darkness. We ran blindly through the forest, branches clawing at our faces, our hearts pounding in our ears. The forest seemed to twist and turn, leading us deeper into its nightmarish depths. Finally, we stumbled upon a dilapidated cabin, standing ominously amidst the trees. It was our only hope for sanctuary. Trembling with fear, we pushed open the creaking door and stumbled inside, slamming it shut behind us. The cabin was in a state of disarray, as if someone had hastily abandoned it long ago. As we caught our breath, we realized that we were not alone. The cabin was filled with a sickening stench, and the sound of heavy breathing echoed through the silence. We huddled together, our eyes darting around the room, searching for the source of the noise. Suddenly the door burst open, and a monstrous figure loomed in the doorway. It was a creature straight out of nightmares, its eyes glowing with an unholy light. With a guttural growl, it lunged towards Yus, claws outstretched. In a desperate fight for survival, we fought back with whatever we could find: chairs, broken glass, anything that could be used as a weapon. But the creature was relentless, overpowering us with its sheer strength and ferocity. One by one, my friends fell, their screams echoing in my ears as I fought for my life. In a final act of desperation, I managed to grab a nearby lantern and smash it against the creature's head. The cabin erupted in flames, casting an eerie glow on the chaos that surrounded us. The creature let out a deafening screech before collapsing to the ground, consumed by the inferno. With the cabin engulfed in flames, I stumbled out into the night, gasping for breath. The forest was alive with the crackling of fire and the wails of the dying creature. I ran as fast as my trembling legs would carry me, desperate to put as much distance as possible between myself and the horror I had just witnessed. Eventually, I emerged from the forest, my body covered in scratches, and my mind haunted by the images that would forever haunt my nightmares. I collapsed on the side of the road, a passing car stopping to offer help. I could only mutter fragments of the horrors I had endured, unable to fully convey the terror that had consumed us that night. The authorities were called, and a search was conducted in the forest. But no trace of the creature was ever found. It seemed to have vanished, leaving behind only the scars of our ordeal. To this day, I cannot explain what we encountered in that wilderness, nor do I want to dwell on the possibility of it returning. That night forever changed me. The innocence and naivety I once had about the world were shattered, replaced by a deep-rooted fear and a constant sense of unease. I no longer find solace in the wilderness, and the thought of camping fills me with a dread I cannot shake. So, if you ever find yourself venturing into the unknown, heed my warning. Be cautious of the darkness that lurks within the wild. For there are things out there, things beyond our comprehension, waiting to prey upon the unsuspecting. And once you encounter true horror in the wilderness, it will forever haunt your soul. I woke up to the sound of crackling leaves beneath my sleeping bag. It took me a moment to remember where I was, deep in the heart of the wilderness, on a camping trip with my friends. The darkness of the night surrounded me, and the only source of illumination came from the dwindling campfire. Everything seemed eerily quiet, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. A wave of unease washed over me, but I brushed it off as a result of being in an unfamiliar environment. I shook my head, trying to clear my mind, and reached for my flashlight. As I turned it on, the beam of light pierced through the darkness, revealing the outlines of the trees that surrounded our campsite. I decided to step outside and relieve myself before attempting to go back to sleep. The crisp night air chilled me to the bone, causing me to shiver involuntarily. I walked a short distance away from the camp, trying to find a suitable spot. But as I looked around, I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was being watched. A rustling noise echoed from the bushes nearby, and my heart skipped a beat. I swung my flashlight towards the source of the sound, but the beam only caught a glimpse of the swaying branches. My mind raced with thoughts of wild animals lurking in the darkness, waiting to pounce. I hurriedly finished my business and scurried back to camp, my footsteps echoing loudly in the silent night. Back at the campsite, I found my friends still fast asleep. I crawled back into my sleeping bag, trying to convince myself that it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But as I closed my eyes, the noises in the forest grew louder, as if something or someone was getting closer. I tried to ignore the sounds and focus on falling asleep, but a bone-chilling howl pierced through the night, causing me to jolt upright. It was a sound I had never heard before, a mix of anguish and primal aggression. Fear clenched my heart as I realized that whatever was out there was not a typical woodland creature. I woke my friends, urgently whispering about the strange noises and our need to leave. Panic filled their eyes as they too heard the unusual sounds emanating from the darkness. We quickly packed up our belongings, not bothering to fold our tents neatly. Survival instinct kicked in, and we knew we had to get out of there. Footfalls. We ran as fast as we could, branches scratching our faces. Adrenaline pumping through our veins. The forest seemed to stretch on forever, each step feeling like an eternity. Finally, we burst out of the trees, panting and gasping for breath. We had made it out alive. Looking back, we saw nothing but the impenetrable blackness of the forest. Whatever had been pursuing us had vanished, leaving only a lingering sense of dread in its wake. To this day, we don't know what we encountered that night. A creature of the wilderness, a figment of our collective imagination, or something more sinister. But that camping trip will forever be etched in our minds as a true and original horror story, experienced firsthand in the depths of the unknown. I still remember that night in the prison vividly, as if it were etched into the depths of my mind. It was my early days as a prison guard, and I found myself assigned to a housing unit notorious for its haunting past. Death seemed to linger in the air, casting a chilling shadow over every corner. Little did I know that this night would forever change the way I viewed the world, blurring the line between the living and the dead. As the clock struck midnight, the prison halls grew eerily quiet. The offenders were supposed to be confined to their cells, yet the knowledge that they could venture out to the communal bathroom sent a shiver down my spine. Duty compelled me to face the darkness that lay ahead, to confront the unknown lurking within those concrete walls. The hours passed, and I found myself working overtime, the weight of exhaustion tugging at my eyelids. It was well past 2 a.m. when I prepared myself for the mandatory count, a task that demanded my presence in every nook and cranny of that desolate prison. With trepidation in my heart, I began my rounds, hoping for a swift and uneventful night. As I approached the housing unit's bathroom, a flickering light cast haunting shadows, dancing along the walls like ethereal specters. I watched in disbelief as an offender descended the stairs from the second level and vanished into the bathroom, an inexplicable presence in the dead of night. A wave of uncertainty washed over me, giving birth to a sliver of fear that crept up my spine. Summoning my courage, I stood at the entrance to the bathroom, my voice trembling as I called out to the mysterious figure. "What cell are you in?" I shouted, desperate to account for this unforeseen visitor. Silence engulfed the room, swallowing my words as they dissipated into the abyss. The air grew heavy, pregnant with an unsettling stillness that left me unnerved. Driven by a mix of curiosity and duty, I mustered the resolve to venture inside the bathroom, my heart pounding in my chest like an erratic drumbeat. The dimly lit space seemed to amplify the weight of the past, pulling me deeper into its enigmatic grasp. I searched every corner, my eyes darting from shadow to shadow, seeking any trace of the elusive figure that had vanished before my eyes. But my efforts were in vain. The bathroom yielded no signs of life, no evidence of the individual who had crossed my path. I was left standing alone, consumed by a creeping sense of dread that crawled beneath my skin. The realization hit me like a thunderclap when I confided in a fellow guard, recounting the bizarre encounter that had shaken me to my core. His voice quivered as he posed a chilling question. Was he tall and skinny with long dreads? My breath caught in my throat as I whispered a terrified, yes. His words hung in the air, laden with a dreadful truth. That's Mr. Bones, he said, his voice tinged with a mixture of sorrow and fear. He took his own life years ago, but his spirit still lingers within these walls. The revelation struck me like a sledgehammer. Mr. Bones, a ghostly presence, had chosen that fateful night to reveal himself to me, a mere newcomer navigating the treacherous corridors of the afterlife. The prison had become his eternal abode, a spectral realm where the living and the dead converged in an ethereal dance. From that moment on, my nights in the prison took on a new dimension. The specter of Mr. Bones haunted my every step, his presence a constant reminder of the darkness that dwelled within those thick, cold walls. Sleep became an elusive companion as I grappled with the reality that the line between life and death had blurred, and that the spirits of the departed could still roam amongst us. To this day, I carry the weight of that encounter, a chilling tale etched deep within my soul. The prison, once a fortress of punishment, had become a testament to the lingering shadows of the past. And as I continue my duties, forever changed by that otherworldly night, I remain ever vigilant, knowing that the specter of Mr. Bones and the echoes of the prison's haunted history will forever haunt my dreams. As a night shift custodian at the middle school, my routine consisted of cleaning the long U-shaped wing filled with classrooms every weeknight. It was a solitary job that often left me feeling uneasy, with a constant sense of being watched. But one particular night, the eerie ambiance escalated into a chilling encounter that would forever haunt my memories. As the clock struck midnight, I had already locked one set of doors to the wing and began making my way towards the opposite end of the U. The flickering fluorescent lights cast long shadows, amplifying the desolate atmosphere. With each step, the creaking floorboards seemed to echo through the empty hallways, setting my nerves on edge. I meticulously cleaned each classroom, my footsteps resonating in the silence. The stillness was oppressive, and a sense of foreboding enveloped the air. I couldn't shake the feeling that unseen eyes were observing my every move, lurking beyond the veil of darkness. Finally, I reached the end of the hallway where the doors leading to the rest of the school awaited. Gathering my courage, I switched off the lights, plunging the corridor into an inky blackness. It was then that I saw it, a distorted silhouette, barely visible against the dim glow from the moonlit windows. My heart skipped a beat as the figure materialized before me. It appeared to be a child, but there was something dreadfully wrong about its presence. The shape darted across the end of the hallway, from left to right, disappearing into the shadows. Panic gripped me, for I had just locked all the doors down that passage, ensuring no one could have entered or exited. A chill crept up my spine, causing a shiver to ripple through my body. I fought the rising fear, my mind racing to find a logical explanation. But the unsettling truth was undeniable. I was not alone in this desolate wing. The darkness concealed a malevolent force that defied comprehension. Determined to escape this unnerving encounter, I swiftly locked the doors connecting the wing to the rest of the school. The metallic click of the locks echoed through the hallway, but it provided little solace. Fear propelled me forward as I sprinted toward the exit, my footsteps echoing through the empty corridors. The night air outside offered a semblance of relief, but the memory of that encounter lingered, etched into my mind like a permanent scar. The school held secrets, shrouded in an otherworldly presence that defied explanation. I used to clean the church alone late at night. It was a peaceful routine that I had grown accustomed to over the years. But little did I know, there was something eerie lurking in the shadows, waiting to reveal its presence to me. Upstairs, tucked away in the attic, was an old piano. It had been abandoned and left to collect dust, its keys silent and motionless. I assumed it was broken, which was why it had been banished to the attic. However, one fateful night, the tranquility of my solitude was shattered by an unexpected sound. As I went about my usual routine, I heard faint strains of piano music drifting down from the attic. At first, I dismissed it as my imagination playing tricks on me. Perhaps my mind was conjuring up the melodies to alleviate the monotony of my tasks. But as the haunting notes grew louder, curiosity got the better of me. I cautiously made my way up the creaking staircase, my heart pounding in anticipation. The eerie music led me to the attic door, which stood slightly ajar as if inviting me to enter. I pushed it open, expecting to find someone hiding inside, ready to jump out and laugh at my unease. To my shock, the attic was empty. No prankster, no trickster, just me and the lone piano, its keys dancing to an unseen hand. A chill ran down my spine, and a deep sense of foreboding settled over the room. I knew then that something inexplicable was happening. As I turned to retreat from the attic, a deafening bang echoed through the space. It came from a metal door, concealed in the corner, a hidden closet I hadn't noticed before. Fear gripped me, but my curiosity compelled me to investigate further. With trembling hands, I approached the metal door, hesitating for a moment before summoning the courage to open it. As the door swung open, a cold gust of wind rushed out, extinguishing the flickering candlelight that had guided my way. In the darkness, I could make out nothing but an abyss of unknown horrors. Suddenly, a presence enveloped me, an unseen force that sent shivers down my spine. Whispers filled the air, echoing through the attic, their source unknown and their words undecipherable. Panic consumed me, and I stumbled backward, desperate to escape this nightmare. From that night onward, I vowed never to work the night shift again. I shared my harrowing experience with the one other person who dared to brave those late hours alone. To my astonishment, she confirmed that strange occurrences were not uncommon in the church at night. The church held secrets hidden beneath its tranquil facade. It was a place where the supernatural mingled with the mundane, where the echoes of the past reverberated through time. The piano in the attic was but a vessel, an instrument through which an otherworldly presence sought to communicate. Although I left that job behind, the memory of that night still lingers, haunting my dreams and reminding me that some mysteries are not meant to be unraveled. The church stands as a silent witness, its walls concealing the secrets of the night. And I, forever changed by that encounter, am left wondering what lies hidden in the darkness, just beyond our realm of understanding. Prepare for a chilling journey into the depths of horror. Subscribe to my channel and immerse yourself in a world of terrifying tales that will leave you breathless. I woke up to the sound of rain tapping against the window pane. It was a dark and stormy night, and I found myself in a remote cabin nestled deep within the woods. The flickering candle on the table provided the only source of light, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Little did I know that this night would become a nightmare I'd never forget. I had chosen this cabin as a secluded getaway, seeking solace from the chaos of the city. But as I sat there, the isolation started to feel suffocating. The storm outside grew fiercer, the wind howling through the trees like a chorus of lost souls. Trying to shake off the unease, I decided to distract myself by exploring the cabin. It was a rustic place, with wooden beams and creaky floorboards that groaned under my weight. As I wandered from room to room, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. A chill ran down my spine, and a sense of dread settled in my gut. I retreated to the living room, hoping to find comfort in the warmth of the crackling fireplace. But as I settled into the worn-out armchair, I noticed something peculiar, a faded photograph on the mantel. It depicted a family, their smiling faces frozen in time. It seemed out of place in this desolate cabin. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to investigate further. The cabin had a small library, filled with dusty books that seemed untouched for years. Among them, I discovered a journal, its pages yellowed with age. I opened it cautiously, revealing the words of a previous occupant. The journal spoke of strange occurrences and unexplainable phenomena within the cabin. The writer described hearing whispers in the dead of night and seeing shadowy figures lurking in the corners. The more I read, the more I became convinced that something sinister dwelled within these walls. Determined to uncover the truth, I delved deeper into the cabin's history. I discovered that it was built by a family who met a tragic end under mysterious circumstances. Locals whispered of a curse that plagued the place, claiming that anyone who stayed there would suffer the same fate. As the storm raged on outside, I felt a growing presence, an invisible force that seemed to tighten its grip around me. The cabin had become a prison, and I was its unwilling captive. Every creak of the floorboards sent shivers down my spine, and every gust of wind made me jump in fear. Night fell, and with it came a thick fog that enveloped the cabin. The darkness seemed to seep into my very soul, filling me with an indescribable dread. In the silence, I could hear whispers, faint and ghostly, as if the spirits of the past were trying to communicate with me. I barricaded myself in the bedroom, desperate for some semblance of safety. But as I lay there, my heart pounding in my chest, I heard a scratching sound coming from the door. Slowly, I approached it, trembling with every step. I cautiously opened the door, only to be greeted by an empty hallway. The night wore on, and the horrors escalated. The whispers grew louder, the shadows danced with malicious intent. I felt a presence in the room, an icy breath on the back of my neck. I turned around, and there, standing before me, was a ghostly figure, a manifestation of the cabin's dark past. Paralyzed with fear, I could only watch as the figure moved closer, its eyes filled with sorrow and longing. It spoke, its voice a haunting melody, recounting the family's tragic tale. Their spirits were trapped, unable to find peace until the curse was broken. With every word, I felt a surge of empathy. I knew then that I had to unravel the mystery and set their souls free. Gathering my courage, I embarked on a journey to uncover the truth behind the curse, following clues hidden within the cabin's walls. Days turned into nights as I pieced together the fragments of the past. I discovered a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards, revealing a long-lost letter that held the key to breaking the curse. It spoke of forgiveness and redemption, of releasing the pain that bound the spirits to the cabin. Armed with this newfound knowledge, I returned to the cabin and performed a ritual to cleanse the space. As the incense burned and the words of forgiveness echoed through the air, I felt a wave of peace wash over me. The spirits disappeared, their burden finally lifted. The storm outside subsided and the sun peeked through the clouds, casting a warm glow on the cabin. I knew then that I had accomplished something extraordinary, a feat that would forever be etched in the annals of time. Leaving the cabin behind, I walked away, forever changed by the experience. The horrors I encountered had tested my courage and resilience, but they had also taught me the power of compassion and the strength of the human spirit. And as I stepped out into the fresh air, I couldn't help but feel a sense of liberation. The weight that had burdened the cabin was lifted, and the once eerie place now held a serene beauty. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake off the memories of that fateful night. The cabin had become a part of me, a chapter in my life that would forever be etched in my mind. I vowed to share the story, to warn others of the darkness that lurked within those walls. Years later, I returned to the cabin, not as a victim, but as a storyteller. I had written a book, a chilling account of my experiences, and the cabin had become a place of intrigue for thrill seekers and paranormal enthusiasts. It stood as a testament to the power of human resilience and the triumph over darkness. As I stood before the cabin, visitors bustling around me, I couldn't help but smile. The place that once held fear now held fascination, and I had played a part in its transformation. The cabin had become a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the most terrifying situations, there is always a glimmer of light. And so, the cabin horror story continues to be told, passed down from generation to generation. It serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder to tread carefully in the face of the unknown. And for those who dare to step foot inside, they will forever be reminded of the power of forgiveness, the strength of the human spirit, and the enduring legacy of the haunted cabin in the woods. As the sun began to set on a chilly autumn evening, I found myself driving through the dense woods, searching for the secluded cabin I had rented for a much-needed getaway. The winding road seemed to stretch on endlessly, surrounded by towering trees that loomed ominously in the fading light. As I navigated deeper into the wilderness, a sense of unease settled in the pit of my stomach. but I brushed it off as mere nerves. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the cabin emerged from the shadows. It stood alone, its weathered wooden exterior blending seamlessly with the surrounding forest. I parked my car and stepped out, taking in the crisp air and the serene silence that enveloped the area. It was the perfect escape from the chaos of the city, or so I thought. Upon entering the cabin, I was struck by an unsettling feeling. There was an inexplicable heaviness in the air, as if the very walls were whispering secrets. Ignoring my unease, I unpacked my belongings and settled in for the night, determined to make the most of my time away. As darkness descended, strange occurrences began to unfold. I would hear faint whispers echoing through the cabin, but when I searched for their source, I found nothing. Doors would creak open or slam shut on their own accord, and objects would move inexplicably from one place to another. Each night, I would awake to the sound of footsteps pacing back and forth outside my bedroom door. Yet when I opened it to confront the intruder, the hallway would be empty. My nerves frayed with each passing day. I tried to rationalize the events, blaming the old cabin's creaking structure and my overactive imagination. But the feeling of being watched never left me, even when I was alone. Shadows danced in the corners of my vision, and the sensation of icy fingers grazing my skin sent shivers down my spine. One stormy night, as rain lashed against the windows, the true horrors of the cabin revealed themselves. I awoke to find myself paralyzed, unable to move or scream. A dark figure stood at the foot of my bed, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. It whispered in a voice that chilled me to the bone, recounting tales of tragedy and despair that had plagued the cabin for decades. As the figure vanished, I was released from its grip, gasping for air. Fear consumed me, and I knew I had to escape the cabin's clutches. With trembling hands, I packed my belongings, desperate to leave the nightmare behind. But as I made my way to the door, a force pushed me back, as if the cabin itself was determined to keep me trapped within its walls. In a final act of defiance, I broke free from the invisible hold and sprinted towards my car. With the cabin growing smaller in my rearview mirror, a profound sense of relief washed over me. I had survived the horrors of the cabin, but the memories would haunt me forever. To this day, I cannot explain the true nature of the cabin's malevolence. Whether it was a manifestation of dark spirits or simply the product of an overactive imagination, I will never know. But one thing is certain. I will never forget the long, terrifying nights spent in that cursed cabin in the woods. It was a cold and stormy night when I arrived at the remote cabin, nestled deep within the woods. The rain poured relentlessly, creating a symphony of drumming on the rooftop. The sound was both eerie and comforting, as if the cabin itself was singing a haunting lullaby. I had decided to take a weekend getaway to escape the chaos of the city, seeking solace in the tranquility of nature. Little did I know that this cabin held secrets darker than the night that surrounded it. As I stepped inside, the scent of mildew and decay filled my nostrils. The air was heavy, almost suffocating. Ignoring the unsettling atmosphere, I set my bags down and ventured further into the cabin, determined to make myself at home. The interior was dimly lit by a flickering oil lamp, casting eerie shadows on the peeling wallpaper. The place seemed frozen in time, trepid in a bygone era. Old photographs adorned the walls, capturing the faces of unknown inhabitants who stared at me with hollow eyes. A sense of unease settled deep within my bones, but I dismissed it as mere imagination. I reassured myself that it was just the isolation playing tricks on my mind. Little did I know, I was far from alone. As night fell, the storm intensified, unleashing its fury upon the cabin. The wind howled like a tortured soul, rattling the windows and causing the cabin to creak and groan in protest. Shadows danced along the walls, their movements unsettlingly synchronized with the storm outside. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to explore the cabin further. I stumbled upon a locked door in the basement, its surface covered in layers of dust. The door seemed to call out to me, whispering secrets and promises of adventure. Against my better judgment, I searched for the key. After what felt like an eternity of rummaging through drawers and cabinets, I found a small, rusted key hidden inside an old book. Trembling with anticipation, I made my way back to the basement door. As I turned the key in the lock, a wave of dread washed over me. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. My heart pounded in my chest, but I couldn't resist the urge to uncover the cabin's secrets. With each step, the air grew colder and the silence became oppressive. The darkness swallowed me whole, enveloping me in its suffocating embrace. I reached the bottom of the stairs and fumbled for a light switch, but found none. I was consumed by an abyss of blackness. Suddenly, a faint glow emerged from the darkness, illuminating a room filled with ancient relics and oddities. My eyes widened in horror as I realized that these artifacts were not mere curiosities, but macabre trophies. The room was a shrine to something far more sinister. I felt a presence behind me, a cold breath on the back of my neck. I turned, my heart racing with fear. Standing before me was a figure clad in tattered clothes, its face obscured by shadows. Its eyes gleamed with a malevolent light, and a wicked smile curved across its lips. I wanted to scream, to run, and escape the clutches of the cabin's dark secrets, but my body refused to obey. The figure moved closer, its steps slow and deliberate. It whispered words of ancient incantations, filling the room with a haunting melody. With each passing moment, the figure's presence grew stronger, suffocating me with its malevolence. I was paralyzed, trapped in a nightmare from which there seemed to be no escape. The cabin's secrets had claimed me as their own. As the figure reached out to touch me, a sudden burst of courage surged through my veins. I mustered all my strength and broke free from its grasp. Running blindly through the darkness, I stumbled my way back up the stairs, fueled by sheer terror. I burst out of the basement, gasping for breath, and slammed the door shut behind me. The cabin trembled as if in protest, but I cared not. I raced to my car, never looking back, desperate to leave the nightmare behind. As I sped away, the storm began to subside, and the rain turned into a gentle drizzle. I glanced at the rear-view mirror, half expecting to see the figure chasing after me, but there was only darkness. The cabin faded into the distance, becoming nothing more than a haunting memory. Its secrets remained buried within its walls, locked away from the world. I vowed never to return, to leave the horrors of that night behind. But even now, as I sit in the safety of my home, a chill runs down my spine whenever the wind howls and the rain pours. The cabin's dark secrets still linger, a reminder that some horrors are best left undisturbed. On Black Friday, my brothers and I decided to go video game shopping. Our first and only stop was Walmart, which was packed with people. As expected, the store had attracted a diverse crowd, including some peculiar individuals who seemed out of place. We made our way upstairs to the video game section, with me personally looking for the latest Call of Duty game, while my brothers searched for other titles. Amidst the chaos, a strange, heavy-set man with a nauseating odor approached me out of nowhere. "You like video games, huh?" he said, his voice unsettling. I immediately felt uncomfortable and began to subtly distance myself from him, hoping to convey my disinterest in conversation. However, he persisted, mentioning that his son also enjoyed video games and suggested that I come over to play with him sometime. His creepy smile sent shivers down my spine. Thinking on my feet, I quickly replied, "Oh, I'm not from around here. Sorry." I didn't give him a chance to continue the conversation. I smiled and called out to my brothers, pretending to be distracted as I walked away. Glancing back, I noticed that the man was still staring at me intently, which only increased my unease. Seeking solace, I joined my brothers in the next aisle over, feeling a sense of relief just being in their presence. We waited until they found their game, and then we made our way to the checkout counters. The lines were incredibly long, and I estimated it would take at least 10 to 15 minutes to reach the counters. I took advantage of the wait to browse the jeans and t-shirt sales. At one point, I found myself in a secluded corner of the store, engrossed in examining some t-shirts, when suddenly someone grabbed my arm forcefully. Assuming it was one of my brothers playing a prank, I turned around, ready to tell them off. However, to my horror, it wasn't my brother. It was the same man from earlier. Panic set in, and I began screaming for help, desperately signaling that I didn't know this man. Though some people glanced over, No one offered assistance. Eventually, the man released his grip and walked away. I couldn't fathom what he had intended or what he was thinking, attempting such a brazen act in a crowded public place. Overwhelmed with embarrassment, I chose not to divulge the incident to my brothers, but they sensed my unease from my sudden silence. Leaving the store, we headed towards my brother's Camaro. As I settled into the car seat, I glanced towards the entrance of Walmart, and there he was. The creepy man was sitting on a bench, positioned to face me directly as we drove past him. Even in the dimly lit night, his head subtly turned to maintain eye contact through the car window. Frustrated and enraged, I gave him the finger, but it seemed to have no effect on him. That was the last time I ever saw him. Walmart always seemed to attract a wide array of people, some of whom were undeniably strange. However, encountering that peculiar man on Black Friday was an experience I would never forget. In 2013, I made the impulsive decision to join the early morning Black Friday madness at Home Depot. They were offering incredible deals on artificial Christmas trees, so I wanted to snag one for my family. The store opened its doors at 3 a.m., 3 hours earlier than usual for the shopping frenzy. Surprisingly, there were only 2 of us waiting outside, myself and another Guy. It seemed like everyone else had flocked to Best Buy or the mall. After browsing through the store, I stumbled upon a beautiful 9-foot-tall artificial Christmas tree. Its original price was $200, but at that moment, it was on sale for only $100. Excited about the bargain, I asked one of the few employees working at that early hour to assist me in carrying the box to the checkout, and later to my car. To my surprise, the parking lot remained unusually empty for Black Friday. It made me realize that perhaps I didn't need to arrive so early. Regardless, I tipped the helpful employee and hopped into my car, ready to leave. However, just as I was about to drive away, I heard a knock on my window. Curious, I rolled it down and was met with the sight of a tall, black, beanie-wearing guy in his mid-20s. He leaned into my window and asked if I had any spare change. I checked the small compartment where I usually kept change, but it was empty. Not wanting to hand him a larger bill, I apologized and said I didn't have any change. He looked disappointed, and although I felt a pang of guilt, I decided to stick to my response. Just when I thought the encounter was over, he asked if I could give him a lift to the nearest gas station. Allowing a stranger into my car made me a bit nervous, but against my better judgment, I decided to help him out. Strangely, he didn't express any gratitude as he entered the car. That lack of thanks stung a little, given my sensitivity. I asked him if he knew of any nearby gas stations, to which he flatly replied, "Nah." It was as if he purposely ignored my question. As we continued driving down Main Street and various side roads, I scoured the surroundings for gas stations, but none seemed to appear. The whole situation was making me increasingly uncomfortable. I tried not to look at him, but I could sense his gaze fixed upon me. His relentless stare made me sweat, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I feared that at any moment he might lunge at me, choking the life out of me. Finally, I spotted a gas station just beyond a recently turned red traffic light. It had to turn red just now, I muttered to myself. Still, even as I avoided eye contact, I could feel his penetrating stare. Summoning my courage, I glanced over at him. His cold, emotionless gaze seemed to pierce through my eyes, reaching deep into my soul. Concerned, I asked if he was okay. He gave the slightest of nods, almost imperceptible. As I pulled into the gas station, he stepped out and positioned himself by the sidewalk, watching me intently as I drove away. However, my momentary relief soon turned to panic when I realized something crucial. I was missing my phone. I frantically patted myself down, realizing I had left it in the cup holder of my car. My phone contained all my personal information, and the thought of some stranger having access to it sent shivers down my spine. Contemplating whether to involve the police, I wrestled with fear and uncertainty. Eventually, I chose not to call them, but the anxiety kept me up all night. The following evening, after returning from a delayed Thanksgiving dinner that spanned 2 days, I discovered my front door ajar and my entire house in disarray. Fearing the worst, I dialed the police using my neighbor's phone. Although they didn't find the intruder instead, they did uncover his fingerprints scattered throughout my home. To my astonishment, the prints did not match anyone in their records. It was as if this person was a complete enigma. The incident left me shaken, and I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Knowing that someone had violated my home and potentially had access to my personal information haunted me. On Thanksgiving, I had a small gathering with half of my family and our next-door neighbors, Tom and his wife. Since they didn't have a large family, they often joined us to watch the game after dinner. While everyone settled in the living room to watch football, my daughters Tracy and Michelle, who weren't interested in the game, stayed in Michelle's room. Michelle was only 13 years old, and Tracy was 16 at the time. During halftime, I decided to go upstairs to Michelle's room and convince her to come down. After some persuasion, she finally agreed and followed me back to the living room. Some of the in-laws and I stepped outside for a smoke break, and I struck up a conversation with Tom about his son, Sam. Apparently, Sam had gone back home to watch movies alone after being with us earlier. Tom jokingly mentioned that Sam was probably just watching porn. As I left the group and glanced up at one of the windows of my house, I noticed someone looking out from Michelle's room. Confused, I wondered why Michelle had gone back to her room. But then it dawned on me that the person at the window wasn't Michelle. In fact, I had no idea who it was. Excusing myself, I hurried back inside and upstairs to Michelle's room, with Michelle following closely. Once in her room, I asked if someone had been there, but Michelle denied it. I scanned the room, but it was completely empty. I nudged Michelle to go downstairs while I turned off the lamp. We returned to the living room just as the game was about to start. However, I couldn't shake off the feeling that someone was lying about being in Michelle's room. Suddenly, I heard a faint thud coming from upstairs, specifically from Michelle's room. Without hesitation, I sprinted back upstairs, with Michelle trailing behind. I switched on the lights and frantically looked around, trying to spot anyone. That's when I noticed the sliding closet door slightly ajar. It hadn't caught my attention before, but now I realized that I could see something through the crack. An eye. In a moment of terror, I screamed like a child for a couple of seconds. Michelle's relatives rushed into the room, and together we opened the closet door. To my shock, I found myself holding Sam, Tom's son, by the neck. He had some of my daughter's personal belongings that I'd rather not disclose. This incident not only scarred me, but also strained my friendship with Tom and his wife. It made me even more protective of my daughter, and as I realized the importance of ensuring her safety. I hope you enjoyed these stories. Please be sure to leave a like and let me know which story was your favorite one. And until next time, stay safe and keep watching Nightfall Chronicles. It was a Tuesday night in March, and I found myself driving back from a friend's house in the city. The journey typically took about an hour under normal weather conditions. But on this particular night, a deep fog had settled over the long, desolate highway. It was past midnight, and aside from the occasional passing semi with unfamiliar license plates, the road appeared abandoned. The time was 1 a.m., and the exhaustion of a long day spent exploring the city with my friends weighed heavily upon me. My eyelids grew heavy as the impenetrable fog transformed the highway into a swirling, hypnotic sea of gray. I proceeded cautiously, slowing down my speed to a crawl and intermittently flashing my hazard lights to signal my presence to any vehicles behind me. Suddenly, a vehicle emerged from the fog, its wheels straddling the line between the highway and the shoulder. Reacting swiftly, I slammed on my brakes and pulled over, narrowly avoiding a collision with the vehicle's bumper. My heart pounded in my chest from the close call, prompting me to put my car in park and catch my breath. From behind the black sedan, I observed as it slowly rolled forward, completely parking on the shoulder. A moment later, the driver's side window descended, and an arm appeared, gesturing for me to pull over. Still reeling from the adrenaline surge, I decided it was safer to move further off the road. Thus, I followed the car as it turned onto a side road, eventually coming to a stop. The driver's side door opened, and a young man, tall and lean, approached me through the fog. He sported a black winter jacket and jeans, his smile illuminated by my headlights. I rolled down my window slightly, expecting him to apologize for his reckless parking. However, he motioned for me to roll it down further. A sense of unease washed over me, and I declined, assuring him that I could hear him perfectly fine. Curious, he inquired about my destination, and I replied that I was heading home. He warned me about the persisting fog, emphasizing the dangers of driving in such conditions. I assured him that I was comfortable continuing my journey. Perplexed, he raised an eyebrow and questioned why I had pulled over in the first place. Not wishing to engage in a confrontation, I fabricated a story, claiming that I had received an urgent phone call that necessitated the stop. His smirk indicated that he saw through my lie. He mentioned that he lived nearby with his wife and son, just a 5-minute drive away, and suggested that I wait out the fog at his place. I declined once again, but he persisted, attempting to frighten me with statistics about the increased risk of accidents during foggy conditions. He also commented on my tired appearance, urging me to consider the safety of my family before returning to the road. Despite his growing frustration, I stood my ground. As he glanced back at his car, I noticed movement in the passenger seat, a person who had been concealed from my view. Suddenly, the man lunged for my door handle, attempting to force it open. Thankfully, my doors were locked, preventing his entry. Simultaneously, the passenger door swung open, and another man emerged, wielding a baseball bat. Reacting swiftly, I shifted my car into reverse, and the driver shouted something at his accomplice as I accelerated. The swing of the baseball bat narrowly missed my car as I hastily retreated. Though I hadn't pulled far off the highway, the dense fog made it difficult to discern where the road ended and the highway began. Gradually reversing, I carefully turned my wheels and shifted back into drive, praying that no oncoming traffic would impede my escape. With my foot firmly pressing the gas pedal, I merged onto the highway, a surge of relief coursing through me. I dared not look back, focusing solely on the road ahead. Often, when I find myself driving along that stretch of highway, I can't help but wonder if they targeted anyone else that fateful night. And if I had rolled down my window any further, what horrors might have awaited me. I embarked on a trip from Chicago to Boston to support a family member running the Boston Marathon. Opting for a road trip instead of flying, I took Route 20, known as one of the longest highways in the United States. Starting around 3 p.m. after work, my GPS estimated a 15-hour drive, but I was confident I could make it in 14 hours considering my driving style. Most of Route 20 had open landscapes and minimal traffic, making for a relatively smooth journey. Around 10 hours into the drive, at 1 a.m., there were few cars on the road. Despite 2 cups of coffee, fatigue started to set in, but I pushed through, determined to complete the drive without many stops. Suddenly, a vehicle appeared behind me, tailgating aggressively. I switched lanes, but the driver matched my speed. Feeling uneasy, I accelerated to pass, but they swerved back in front of me, forcing me to speed up even more to create distance. It was a tense situation, and I feared a potential road rage incident. As the hours passed, the driver continued to match my speed, raising my concern. Desperate for help or the presence of other cars, I increased my speed, hoping to encounter law enforcement or fellow drivers, but the road remained empty. The driver persisted, even after I switched lanes, indicating something was seriously wrong. The driver flashed their lights behind me, but I refused to slow down. Determined to escape, I accelerated further. Eventually, I managed to maneuver around the vehicle and sped away, leaving them behind. I exited at the next opportunity, hoping the presence of other cars would deter any pursuit. At a red light, the pickup truck behind me unexpectedly stopped, and I took the chance to escape. Once on the main road, surrounded by other vehicles, the pickup truck no longer followed. Relieved, I found solace in a Walmart parking lot, where I rested before continuing my journey. Upon reaching my destination, I shared the terrifying ordeal with my family, warning them to exercise caution when driving late at night. One Saturday, at around 4 in the morning, I was driving to work on the interstate. I was running late and driving quite fast when I noticed a car rapidly approaching from my left side. As it caught up to me, I glanced over and saw the driver looking back at me, accompanied by a young woman in the back seat. Something seemed off when I witnessed the driver push the woman down and swerve the car. It became clear that the woman was desperately trying to get someone's attention and call for help. In that moment, I realized I was witnessing a kidnapping right before my eyes. Filled with shock and concern, I dialed 911 while staying behind the car, matching its speed. The driver continued to assault the woman in the back seat, and I felt a sense of urgency to intervene. However, fearing for my safety, I decided not to confront the driver directly. As the car ahead of me began to slow down, assuming I was following them, I quickly maneuvered around and sped away. I took the next exit but remained close by, keeping the car in sight. While on the phone with the emergency operator, I provided them with details of our location, the car, and our speed. Closing the distance once more, the driver noticed my presence and started braking abruptly. Despite my attempts to go around, he cut me off, forcing me to stop. In a panic, I shifted into reverse until he ceased chasing me. Swiftly shifting back into drive, I accelerated past him. The 911 operator informed me that a state trooper was nearby, and I was instructed to continue driving until I reached the officer. The car behind me persistently followed, both vehicles racing at dangerous speeds. The sight of flashing blue and red lights in my rearview mirror brought immense relief as the pursuing car was pulled over. I pulled over as well, leaving ample space between us, uncertain of what would unfold. With his gun drawn, the police officer apprehended the driver, who was now on the ground, handcuffed. Another officer arrived on the scene, while the woman, badly beaten and in tears, was freed from the back seat. She expressed her immense gratitude and relief, praising me for saving her life. The driver turned out to be her ex-boyfriend, who had forcibly abducted her after she refused to speak with him. It was chilling to consider what might have happened had she not caught anyone's attention, or if I hadn't witnessed her desperate cries for help. Late at night, while driving home from work, I noticed a car with a flashing SOS light on the side of the road. Feeling empathetic, I pulled over to help. A man approached me, claiming his battery had died. Though cautious, I lent him my phone to make a call. As I sat in his car, trying to start it, I suddenly felt someone's grip around my throat. Startled, I broke free and saw a teenager in the back seat. The man with my phone yelled at me, and I quickly escaped to my car. As I sped away, a gunshot shattered my rear windshield. I reached home, reported the incident, but my phone and Bitcoin were gone. Weeks later, my family heard a noise in the backyard, fearing it might be the same person. Thankfully, it was just a scare. From that day on, I vowed never to stop and help strangers on the road at night. The unsettling events haunted me for years, leaving me wary and distrustful. The incident served as a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurk in the shadows, urging me to prioritize my personal safety above all else. I now navigate the night roads with heightened caution, never forgetting the night I narrowly escaped a trap, forever etched in my memory. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing and like this video to help me grow more. Which story would you like me to narrate next? Let me know in the comment section. In high school, I enrolled in a class focused on real-life mysteries and mythology. Although I can't recall the exact name of the course, it delved into intriguing subjects. My friend, whom I'll refer to as Ben, and I decided to take the opportunity to explore our fascination with the supernatural during a field trip organized by our teacher. The destination was an abandoned village nearby, shrouded in mystery and unknown history. As our bus approached the village, we couldn't tear our eyes away from the eerie sight. The dilapidated road, winding through dense forests, led us to a clearing where we disembarked. Grass had overrun the cracked pavement, reaching knee-high, and the tall, ancient brick buildings with boarded-up windows emitted a chilling aura. After the teacher counted heads, our group began the exploration, aiming to apply the skills we had learned to unravel the village's enigmatic past. Among the buildings, one structure stood taller than the rest, captivating my attention. While the teacher led the group toward the village church, Ben and I decided to venture on our own, in search of something intriguing. We veered towards the tallest building and stumbled upon a hole in the ground near its back entrance. Within the hole, a ladder descended into the concrete floor below. Exchanging glances, we both knew we had to explore further. Fortuitously, this was around the time when smartphones started featuring flashlights, so we had a light source at our disposal. The underground space felt creepy, with scattered beer bottles, graffiti on the walls, and dusty wooden planks strewn about. A wooden stairway led into complete darkness, as all windows and doors had been sealed shut from above. Since we had reached the edge of the building, we decided to ascend the stairs cautiously. Each creaky step added to the spine-tingling ambiance, as if the century-old wood might give way beneath us. Ben followed suit, and together we stepped onto the next floor. The interior was cramped, with multiple openings leading to smaller rooms. The darkness was so pervasive that it concealed the fact that it was still daytime outside. An increasing sense of unease settled upon us, and we silently agreed to retreat outside. However, just as we were about to exit, we heard a noise emanating from one of the tiny rooms. A heavy thud, like a large rock hitting the concrete floor. Instead of running away, we froze in place, locking eyes for a moment. Curiosity got the better of us, and we tiptoed towards the room, shining our lights into the darkness. Whatever we witnessed caused us to react swiftly, retracing our steps back down the stairs and hastily ascending the rusty ladder to the surface. As we emerged into the open air, breathless and shaken, we caught up with the rest of the group. To avoid trouble, we kept our experience to ourselves until a classmate inquired about our distress. Reluctantly, we confided in our classmate, recounting how we had sneaked into one of the buildings and encountered 3 individuals standing in a peculiar formation, mere feet away from the doorway. Their chilling presence unnerved us. As we continued to follow the group, we couldn't help but cast glances back at the tall building we had entered. Before departing, we glimpsed a face peering from one of the unboarded upper-level windows. We refrained from informing the teacher, fearing the consequences of our escapade. Speculations raced through our minds. Were those simply homeless people seeking refuge? Could they be hiding gang members? Ben ventured the most unsettling theory, that they were the ghosts of the village's former inhabitants. The image of those 3 figures, calmly and hauntingly staring at us the moment we peered into that room, remains etched in my memory. Despite the unsettling experience, I contemplate revisiting the village one day, perhaps to disprove Ben's ghostly notion. In 4th grade, my class embarked on a field trip to a quaint rural zoo situated about an hour away from our school. The weather that day was overcast, with intermittent raindrops falling from the sky. Although the zoo was relatively small, it was perfect for children, featuring a variety of habitats primarily housing smaller, non-exotic animals. Additionally, there was a sizable building within the zoo premises which showcased taxidermied animals and other intriguing attractions, although the specifics of those have faded from my memory. I must admit, during my elementary and middle school years, I was prone to engaging in peculiar and antisocial behavior. My teachers and my mother often noticed this idiosyncrasy. As a group, we toured the building, and amidst the commotion, I decided to slip away quietly into one of the bathrooms without informing any of the teachers. After tending to my needs and washing my hands, I stepped back into the hallway, only to find it deserted. Seizing the opportunity, I ventured down a corridor we had yet to explore. The dim, moody lighting and the crimson-colored carpets imprinted vividly in my memory. As an 8-year-old, my imagination ran wild, particularly as I gazed at the motionless, preserved animals displayed behind glass cases. Lost in my thoughts, I suddenly froze in my tracks when I noticed a man surreptitiously concealed behind a stack of chairs. Initially, I believed he was merely playing a prank, so I continued on my way. However, the man emerged from his hiding spot and approached me, inquiring about the whereabouts of the group. In response, I innocently replied that I didn't know. Without warning, he firmly clasped my hand and instructed me to follow him. At that moment, I must have assumed he was leading me back to the rest of the group. Obliging, I walked alongside him until we reached an exit door, which opened to the rear section of the building. It revealed a view of a couple of dumpsters, a few benches, and the dense woods beyond. As we stepped outside, his grip tightened around my arm, and his actions grew increasingly forceful. He began dragging me towards the woods, and a nauseating sense of fear overwhelmed me, though I refrained from screaming or calling for help. It was then that a piercing scream shattered the air. The source was one of the teachers, located on the other side of the fence. The sudden outcry prompted the man to release his grip on me and flee into the woods. Within moments, several teachers rushed through the exit door, pulling me back to safety. Amidst their mixture of scolding and comforting words, they promptly contacted my parents, concluding the field trip prematurely. The zoo's proprietors promptly alerted the police, and as we boarded the buses, we bid farewell to the unsettling experience. As my bus departed from the parking lot, my observant 8-year-old self caught sight of the man crouching in the woods near the roadside, concealed behind a branch. He surreptitiously watched as the buses passed by. Strangely, I chose to withhold this information, perhaps due to my shyness or the residual shock from the encounter. The other children on the bus regarded me with puzzled expressions, but I remained silent throughout the journey home. Nonetheless, I hoped fervently that the man would never succeed in abducting another unsuspecting child like myself. During my middle and high school days, I attended the Darien School District in Connecticut, which was known for its wealth. As students, we were fortunate to have numerous field trip opportunities. One memorable trip occurred during my sophomore year, when our chorus class visited Woodloch Pinus Resort in Pennsylvania. November had arrived, and the chilly weather made the trip seem less crowded. My friend Landon and I were assigned to share a room. Upon arrival, we expected the resort to be relatively quiet. Our itinerary spanned 3 days, and 4 chaperones accompanied us. They weren't constantly monitoring us. Instead, we had to inform them of the activities we planned to participate in. The first day was filled with fun and excitement. Landon, 2 girls who were also our friends, and I engaged in go-karting, rock climbing, swimming in the pool, and later we all gathered for dinner. Afterwards, we returned to our room, leaving the blinds to the door open as the moonlight reflected beautifully on the nearby lake. We spent some time outside before heading back inside around 10 o'clock. To our surprise, Landon suddenly screamed, causing me to jump in confusion. I turned my attention towards the door and was horrified by what I saw. A tall, gaunt, older woman with long, grayish hair. She pressed her hands against the glass, as if trying to see inside our room. Eventually, she walked away, leaving us bewildered. Landon looked at me, waiting for my reaction. Realizing something was amiss, we both sprang up from our beds and hurried outside, hoping to catch a glimpse of the woman. However, despite our search, she had vanished. The cement trail that ran alongside the rooms stood empty, devoid of any people. No one was on the surrounding grass or walking down the hill. Yet, we were certain we had seen the woman, confirming that we weren't hallucinating. The following day, we didn't share our eerie encounter with the chaperones, but we confided in the 2 girls who were our friends. Nightfall arrived once again, after a day packed with activities. This time, we closed the blinds and secured the back door before settling in for the night. Landon drifted off to sleep before me. Approximately half an hour later, I abruptly woke up to an unsettling silence. Unsure of what had disturbed my sleep, I sat up and whispered Landon's name. Receiving no response, I turned to my left, attempting to catch a glimpse of him. However, my view of the other bed was obstructed by something. I glanced upward and was met with the sight of the tall old woman looming over my bed. Startled, I froze in place, my entire body trembling. The woman took 2 steps back and uttered, "Your back door was unlocked." Then, she turned and exited the room. I mustered the courage to wake Landon and relayed the unnerving incident to him. We locked the back door, closed the blinds once more, and agreed to stay awake for the remainder of the night. It was already 4 a.m., so we wouldn't lose much sleep. By 8 o'clock, we headed to the dining hall for breakfast. Returning to our room building, ready to inform the chaperones about our experiences, we noticed the old woman through the glass in the adjacent room. There she sat, hands folded, sitting upright, facing the door, facing us. Alarmed, we promptly ran to the front desk in the lobby, seeking assistance from the resort staff instead of our chaperones. The situation perplexed the staff members, who appeared uncertain about how to handle it. Eventually, we convinced them to accompany us to the woman's room. Upon entering, they found her still seated in the same position, accompanied by an older man on the other bed. The man seemed mentally absent, and there was an indescribable, unsettling vibe emanating from him. These were not the kind of people one would expect to encounter at a family-friendly resort. However, despite our hopes, the staff decided not to evict them. Disappointed, we shared the unsettling events with our chaperones. Following extensive discussions and disputes between the chaperones and the staff, it was ultimately decided to cut the trip short. We all returned home, relieved to leave the resort behind. Landon and I, along with the other students, were simply grateful to escape that unsettling environment. The experience left a lasting impression on us, reminding us to remain cautious, even in seemingly safe settings.
I have been a truck driver since the age of 25, and over the years I've had my fair share of interesting experiences, especially during my night drives. As a delivery driver for various companies, I often found myself traveling long distances across states to drop off shipments at different locations. One particular night, I had to transport a trailer full of wooden furniture items from one side of California to the other. The majority of the journey took me through open desert roads, and since I had a late start to the day, I knew I would be driving in the dark for most of the trip. These desert roads were straight and had minimal traffic, allowing me to push the truck a little faster than usual. During the drive, I suddenly noticed flashing rear lights in the distance. I had to hit the brakes hard to bring the truck to a stop when I realized it was a parked old Chevy Impala with its hazards on. Being a good Samaritan, I got out of my truck to check if the occupants needed any help. I approached the car and tapped on the window, but there was no response. Curiosity got the better of me, and I bent down to peer through the tinted window. To my surprise, there was no one inside the car. I checked all the other seats and confirmed that it was empty. Perplexed, I scanned the dark desert landscape ahead, unable to see beyond a short distance. However, something caught my attention, a seemingly abandoned gas station nearby that I hadn't noticed before. With a desire to be helpful, I retrieved a powerful flashlight from my truck and illuminated the area. The abandoned gas station revealed itself, featuring a dirt-filled parking area with 2 gas pumps. Behind them stood a small building, likely an old convenience store. It made sense to assume that whoever owned the car might be in that building. Approaching the front door of the gas station, I called out to announce my presence and offer assistance. The room was dimly lit by my flashlight, and it resembled a typical convenience store, albeit in a state of disrepair. As I called out again, hoping for a response, I heard a faint sound, a shoe scraping against the floor from the other side of the room, behind some shelves that once held snacks and drinks. Curiosity turning into caution, I called out once more, reiterating my willingness to help. In response, I heard a deep, heavy whisper that I couldn't fully comprehend. It sent a shiver down my spine, accompanied by the sound of heavy breathing coming from a corner of the room. Instinctively, I decided to retreat from the building, rushing back to my truck while dialing 911. Terrified to go back inside, I stayed on the line with emergency services, who requested an exact location. Unfortunately, all I could offer was that I was near an abandoned gas station on some desert road. They asked me to remain on the line while they tried to pinpoint my location, but at that moment the car in front of me suddenly started and sped away into the darkness. I hadn't even noticed the driver getting into the vehicle, as my attention was consumed by the phone call and the surrounding darkness. Driven by a mix of fear and determination, I re-entered the building, making sure to keep the emergency operator on the line. I cautiously made my way to the back section, where I had heard the unsettling whisper and breathing. To my horror, I discovered a fresh pool of blood on the floor, leaving me to imagine the events that had transpired. I relayed to the operator that it appeared to be a crime scene, and soon after a team of state troopers arrived at the location. They asked for any additional information I could provide, such as the license plate number or a description of the suspect. All I could recall was that it was a black Chevy Impala from the early 2000s, and I heard a man telling me to leave before a woman's screams echoed through the building. There were no bodies present, but I shared my suspicions regarding what might have occurred. Regrettably, I didn't have a dash cam at the time to capture the license plate number. However, I promptly installed one in my truck the following week. This incident became a haunting, once-in-a-lifetime experience for me, one that will always stay with me. Before transitioning to an office job in the city, I spent 2 years working as a UPS driver. It was a job that provided good pay, and overall, I enjoyed it. However, there were moments that made it challenging. This particular incident took place in 2010, during the winter season when darkness fell early in the day. I was assigned the night shift from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. on a Thursday. Living in a small town in North Carolina that wasn't particularly known for its safety or affluence, I often made deliveries in the same area. The housing situation in this town was peculiar, with some blocks consisting of closely spaced houses and trailer homes, while others were desolate with significant distances between residences. Consequently, deliveries took longer due to the scattered nature of the houses, making it necessary to plan strategic routes using marked maps. On this particular evening, after hours of delivering packages across several small towns, I found myself on a street with spaced-out trailer homes and small houses on one side and a forest on the other. It was a little past 6 p.m., and my shift was winding down, with only a few deliveries left. One of the remaining packages required a signature, so I parked my truck in front of the designated house. Retrieving a large, heavy box from the back of the truck, I noticed small metal pieces rattling inside. Curiosity piqued, but it wasn't my job to guess the contents. I simply had to deliver it to the front door of the trailer home. To my surprise, there was no doorbell, so I resorted to knocking. Despite the lack of lights inside and the absence of a car in the driveway, I hoped someone was home. After a few moments, I noticed the curtains of one window move, followed by footsteps approaching the door. However, an unusually long pause ensued before the door cracked open. An older woman cautiously peeked her head out, seemingly hesitant. When I informed her about the package requiring a signature, she reluctantly opened the door further. She appeared fidgety as she signed the device, leaving a rather sloppy signature. She then asked for my assistance in carrying the box into her room, which I had anticipated. As I stepped into the trailer home, a pungent stench assaulted my senses. Each home has its own distinctive smell, be it pleasant or unpleasant, but this particular residence emitted an overwhelming and repugnant odor. I couldn't discern its source, but it was certainly unpleasant. The woman led me through a narrow hallway where I struggled to carry the heavy box. Eventually, she guided me to a door and instructed me to maneuver the box into the closet at the back of the room. When I requested her to turn on the light, she informed me that it didn't work. Consequently, the room was nearly pitch black, with only a faint glow from the living room lamp illuminating the hallway. Struggling to see, I carefully navigated the box toward the closet. However, as I drew closer, I noticed a figure standing in the corner. It was undoubtedly a person, discernible by their shape and slight movements. The presence of this individual in the closet, hiding from me, defied all logical explanations. Realizing that something was amiss and not wanting to stick around to find out what this woman and the person in the closet had planned, I decided to leave the box where it was. I walked past the woman and bid her a polite farewell, despite her protests and derogatory remarks. I didn't want to escalate the situation or put myself in danger. I continued with my remaining deliveries that night, and once my shift ended, I returned home. However, this unsettling experience marked the beginning of my search for a new and better job, ultimately leading me to pursue an office position in the city. I've been working as a trucker for various companies for the past 10 years. 3 years ago, I was employed by a warehouse company in Kansas, responsible for shipments. On a cold Monday, February 2nd, I found myself behind the wheel of a semi-truck, ready to tackle a busy week of deliveries. Starting my drive at 3 p.m., I aimed to reach my destination by the same night. I wanted to avoid pulling over on the side of the road to sleep, so I pushed myself to complete the journey quickly. Driving slightly above the speed limit, I was aware that it was faster than usual for a semi-truck. As the night progressed, I began to feel increasingly tired, but with the destination less than an hour away, I believed I could power through. My eyes grew dry, and it became a struggle to keep them wide open. Desperate to stay alert, I splashed water on my hand and rubbed it on my face, providing temporary relief. The road was dark, with only my truck's headlights illuminating the way. I remember reaching for a sip of water and being startled when I saw a figure approaching rapidly in the distance. Reacting quickly, I hit the brakes hard, bringing the truck to a near stop. As I got closer, I could make out the features of the person standing in the middle of the road. They wore all black, with a black scarf wrapped around their neck. But what struck me as odd was their unusually long neck. Although their face remained a blur, I considered offering them a ride. However, without hesitation, the mysterious man turned and darted into the woods. Shaken but determined to continue, I pressed on, dismissing the strange encounter. It wasn't until about 20 seconds later that the full weight of the situation hit me, and my heart started racing. I couldn't shake off the eerie feeling of what had just transpired. Nonetheless, I needed to focus on my tight schedule, so I managed to regain my composure after a few minutes. Just as I began to settle down, another unexpected incident occurred. I spotted something dart across the road in front of me. Initially, it resembled a large animal, but as it disappeared into the woods, I realized it was another person. This time, I didn't even tap on the brakes. I simply kept going, increasing my speed to hasten my arrival. Fear had started creeping in, compelling me to get to my destination as quickly as possible. Minutes passed without any further incidents, but exhaustion started to take its toll. I found myself veering into the other lane occasionally, struggling to stay awake. With around 40 minutes remaining in the drive, I began searching for a suitable place to pull over and rest for the night. Eventually, I came across a small gravel clearing on the side of the road, likely intended as a rest stop. I parked the semi-truck there, reclined my seat, and closed my eyes, intending to sleep. Suddenly, I awoke in the darkness, unsure of what had disturbed my slumber. A gut feeling urged me to turn on the headlights, and as I did, the surrounding area in front of the truck was illuminated. To my astonishment, there stood the man with the black scarf I had encountered earlier, this time right in front of the truck. His face was much clearer now, displaying an unnaturally wide smile, while his eyes were wide open, fixed on me through the windshield. Instinctively, I started the truck and maneuvered it out of the clearing as best as I could. I couldn't fathom how he had managed to traverse the 10-mile distance from where I had last seen him. Determined to put as much distance as possible between us, I didn't stop again until I reached my destination. There, in the safety of the parking lot, I eventually fell asleep and woke up early the next morning. Reflecting on the events, I could only rationalize them as products of a fatigued mind, conjuring up vivid and terrifying hallucinations. Nevertheless, the intensity and realism of these experiences continue to confuse and frighten me to this day.
As the rain relentlessly pelted against the window pane, I found myself drawn to the eerie ambiance of the gloomy day. The dark clouds hung low in the sky, casting a shadow over the world outside. It was the perfect setting for a horror story. Little did I know that on this rainy day, I would embark on a terrifying journey that would haunt me for the rest of my life. I had always been fascinated by the supernatural, drawn to the mysteries that lurked in the shadows. So, it was no surprise that I found solace in curling up with a book of spine-chilling tales. But today, I wanted something more. I craved a first-hand experience, a taste of the unknown that would send shivers down my spine. As the afternoon wore on, I stumbled upon an old, worn-out book in the attic. Its title, The Haunting of Hollowbrook Manor, intrigued me. The cover depicted a dilapidated mansion surrounded by mist and darkness. It seemed like fate had guided me to this very moment. With the book in hand, I settled into my favorite armchair, the rain providing the perfect soundtrack to my reading. As I turned the pages, the story began to unfold. It told of a cursed mansion hidden deep within a forgotten forest. The legend spoke of a malevolent spirit that haunted the halls, seeking revenge on anyone who dared to enter. Intrigued and fueled by curiosity, I decided to visit Hollowbrook Manor. The rain had transformed the world outside into a desolate and foreboding landscape, but I felt a strange pull, as though the manor was calling out to me. Armed with a flashlight and a sense of trepidation, I made my way through the dense forest. The rain soaked through my clothes, chilling me to the bone. The path grew narrower and the trees whispered in the wind, their branches reaching out like gnarled fingers. After what felt like hours, I caught sight of the manor through the thick foliage. It stood tall and imposing, its once grand facade now a decaying testament to its former glory. The rain intensified as I approached, as if the heavens themselves were warning me to turn back. But I couldn't resist the allure of the unknown. I stepped through the creaking front door, my heart pounding in my chest. The air inside was heavy with an otherworldly presence, and the flickering candlelight played tricks on my eyes. As I ventured deeper into the manor, the temperature dropped further, and an unsettling silence settled over the house. The walls seemed to whisper secrets, and the floorboards creaked beneath my weight. Shadows danced in the corners of my vision, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Suddenly, a cold breeze swept through the hallway, extinguishing my flashlight. Panic gripped me as darkness enveloped the manor. I fumbled for a match, desperately trying to relight the flame. And that's when I heard it, a faint, distant whisper that sent a chill down my spine. "Get out." I froze, my blood turning to ice. The voice was no longer a distant echo. It was right beside me, its words dripping with malice. I dropped the match, and the hallway was plunged into darkness once more. A sudden gust of wind slammed the door shut, trapping me inside. Panic overwhelmed me as I stumbled through the mansion, searching for an escape. But the halls seemed to twist and turn, leading me in circles. Whispers grew louder, reverberating through the walls, and the spirits of Hollowbrook Manor closed in on me. As I ran, I caught glimpses of ethereal figures, their eyes filled with pain and anger. The spirits reached out to me, their icy fingers brushing against my skin. I could feel their anguish, their desire for vengeance. Finally, in a stroke of luck, I found a hidden passage that led to the attic. I climbed the rickety stairs, hoping for respite. But as I reached the top, the door slammed shut behind me, sealing me inside the attic. The rain pounded against the windows, turning the glass into a blurry canvas. Lightning illuminated the room, revealing a scene of horror. The attic was filled with broken furniture and ancient artifacts, each one carrying a dark history. And in the corner, standing tall and menacing, was the ghostly figure of the malevolent spirit. Its eyes glowed with a fiery intensity as it floated toward me. I could feel its rage, its pain, and its insatiable hunger for revenge. I closed my eyes, preparing for the worst, but instead, I felt a gust of wind rush past me. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in my armchair, the rain still drumming against the window pane. Confusion and relief washed over me. Had it all been a dream? Or had I truly ventured into the realm of the supernatural? To this day, I can still feel the lingering presence of Hollowbrook Manor, the cold touch of the spirits, and the weight of the curse that hangs over that forsaken place. The rainy day served as a gateway to a world beyond our own, a world of darkness and terror that forever changed me. And as I sit here, recounting my harrowing experience, I can't help but wonder if the spirits continue to haunt Hollowbrook Manor, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to stumble upon its cursed grounds. Perhaps one day, someone else will be drawn to its mysteries on a rainy day, just like I was, and their fate will intertwine with the malevolence that lies within. I cautiously sat in front of my computer, my heart pounding in my chest. The room was dimly lit, with only the glow of the monitor illuminating my face. I had heard tales of the dark web, a hidden corner of the internet where the most sinister and disturbing things could be found. Intrigued and filled with a morbid curiosity, I decided to explore this forbidden realm. I had taken all the necessary precautions, using a VPN, Tor browser, and ensuring my webcam was covered. I knew the risks involved, but I couldn't resist the allure of the unknown. I had heard whispers of a website called The Abyss, a place where the darkest desires of humanity were said to be fulfilled. It was rumored to be a hub for illegal activities, from drug trafficking to human experimentation. I had no intention of engaging in any of those activities, but I wanted to see for myself what lay hidden in the depths. After several hours of searching, I finally stumbled upon a link that led me to The Abyss. The website was crude and unsettling, its design filled with dark hues and cryptic symbols. As I scrolled through the content, I realized that it was even worse than I had imagined. There were listings for drugs, weapons, and even human organs. The comments section was filled with people discussing their vile desires and sharing disturbing images. However, one particular listing caught my attention. It was titled The Truth. Intrigued, I clicked on it, and a new page loaded. The listing described an encrypted file that contained information so shocking it could change the world. It claimed to reveal the darkest secrets of governments, corporations, and influential individuals. It sounded like a conspiracy theorist's dream come true, but I couldn't help but wonder if there was any truth to it. Without thinking, I clicked on the Buy Now button and proceeded to make the payment using Bitcoin. Almost instantly, a download link appeared, and I felt a chill run down my spine. I hesitated for a moment, contemplating whether I should go through with it. But my curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked on the link. The file began to download, and as the progress bar filled, a sense of unease washed over me. What had I gotten myself into? The download completed, and I nervously clicked on the file to open it. A text document appeared on the screen, filled with encrypted gibberish. Confused, I tried to make sense of it, but it seemed like an indecipherable code. Just as I was about to give up, a chat box popped up on the screen. A message appeared. "Congratulations on your purchase. The truth awaits those who dare to seek it." Startled, I typed a response, asking for help in decrypting the file. To my surprise, a reply came almost immediately. The person on the other end claimed to be a hacker who specialized in decoding encrypted files. Over the next few days, I exchanged messages with the mysterious hacker. They guided me through the process of decrypting the file, and slowly, the gibberish transformed into comprehensible text. As I read the contents, my eyes widened in disbelief. The truth I had sought was more horrifying than anything I could have imagined. The file contained evidence of government conspiracies, cover-ups, and unspeakable atrocities committed by those in power. It detailed secret experiments on innocent people, mind control programs, and the manipulation of world events to serve hidden agendas. The more I read, the more my sense of reality crumbled. It was as if I had opened a Pandora's box, and there was no turning back. Paranoia consumed me. I constantly looked over my shoulder, fearing that someone was watching, waiting to silence me. I reached out to a few trusted friends, sharing bits and pieces of what I had discovered. But as days turned into weeks, their responses became less frequent, and I couldn't shake the feeling that they had been compromised. Unable to trust anyone, I became a recluse, locking myself in my apartment, surrounded by walls covered in newspaper clippings, red strings connecting names and events. Sleep became a distant memory as nightmares plagued my every waking moment. The weight of the knowledge I possessed was crushing, and I knew I had to do something with it, even if it meant risking my life. With a newfound determination, I decided to share the decrypted file with the world. I created multiple anonymous accounts on various social media platforms and began leaking the information bit by bit. It was a dangerous game, and I knew that the powers I was up against would stop at nothing to silence me. As the truth spread, I became a target. Dark figures appeared outside my apartment, lurking in the shadows. My computer was hacked, my online presence erased. Every step I took was monitored, every move anticipated. It was a race against time, and I knew that if I didn't act quickly, I would meet a gruesome end. In a desperate attempt to protect myself, I reached out to a journalist known for exposing corruption and government secrets. We arranged a meeting in a secluded location, away from prying eyes. As I shared the decrypted file with them, their eyes widened in disbelief. They assured me that they would do everything in their power to get the truth out to the world, to expose the darkness that had consumed so many lives. But before we could make any progress, tragedy struck. The journalist's life was cut short under mysterious circumstances. It was a clear warning, a message that my pursuit of the truth had consequences. Fear gripped me, but I couldn't let their sacrifice be in vain. I went into hiding, changing my appearance and identity. I moved from city to city, always on the run, never staying in one place for too long. The authorities were after me now, labeling me a dangerous whistleblower. The very institutions I had once trusted were now my sworn enemies. The dark web had transformed me from a curious bystander to a fugitive fighting for justice. I continued to leak information, using every means available to me. I created underground networks, rallying like-minded individuals to join the cause. We formed a resistance, determined to expose the truth and bring down the corrupt. Months turned into years as the battle waged on, with no end in sight. Some days, I questioned whether it was all worth it. The sacrifices, the constant fear, the loss of a normal life. But then, I would think of the countless lives affected by the lies and deception, and it fueled my determination. Today, as I write this account, I am still on the run. The truth has cost me everything, but I refuse to back down. I continue to expose the darkness, fighting for a world where transparency and justice prevail. The dark web may have brought me to the edge of sanity, but it also opened my eyes to the depths of human depravity and the power of truth. So, if you ever find yourself tempted to venture into the dark web, remember my story. The horrors that lie within are not just fictional tales, but a chilling reality. And if you dare to seek the truth, be prepared for the consequences. For once you glimpse the darkness, you can never truly escape its grasp.